At American Promise, one of the key pieces of our strategy that I talked about a few minutes ago is the power of networks. And we just saw here in this room, I don't know what breakouts or networking you did, but we had a conversation of healthcare workers and social workers, leaders of national organizations. That's in every community in America. So if we leverage that network effect of our fellow Americans, this will really accelerate, and that's what we're seeing across the country. There's no more powerful network in American Promise because we got it started earliest in our journey, but there are many more coming than our national business network. And that's what we're going to talk about now. Business people are not just business people, of course, but citizens. And from small business to the largest businesses in the world, they're in all of our communities in the country. People get up and go to work every day, listening to each other, negotiating, disagreeing civilly, making compromise, solving problems. Nobody behaves in the everyday work life like we see in our political system, and that's an awfully good thing for us. But that skill that we learn in our work lives turns out is actually very effective as advocacy in something as big as what we're trying to do right now. And we are so glad to have so many business people who've stepped in to this cause and joining American Promise. And we're going to hear from 4 of them right now. And Elizabeth Doty is an author. She's the founder of Leadership Momentum. She's on our American Promise Advisory Council and has been with American Promise from about day one. And she is now the Director of Corporate Political Responsibility at the Herb Institute at the University of Michigan. She'll be moderating this panel with Matt Patsky, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Trillium Asset Management in Boston. We'll be hearing more from Matt and Trillium this evening, also a sponsor of our conference. Thank you, Matt. Dave Black, retired CEO of the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce. Again, we'll hear much more on that. And Maureen Kline, on a very long journey through several countries in Europe to be here with us today before she goes to Montreal tomorrow. That's what it's like when you're the Vice President of Sustainability and Public Affairs at Pirelli Tire North America, a global public company that was one of the first to say, we want this system changed. We support American Promise and our constitutional amendment. They have a policy everywhere in the world of no political election spending, and would certainly like to see that be the case for other large businesses. So I can't wait to hear what this panel is going to bring us. So come on out, and I'll turn it over to Elizabeth Doty. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Oh, we get music. Hello. We were just talking in the green room, and we thought maybe this panel could be really short, because if you ask the question of what can business do to help address the problem of money in our political system, the answer might just be, just stop. Right? But of course, it's more complicated than that. And I think one of the amazing things about American Promise is finding unexpected champions, and champions all over in every sector, every group, every generation across the country who see the need for this constitutional solution. And I think that's what is going to be amazing about our conversation today. I'm really honored to be with all of you today. We're going to work with the time because there's so much, I think, that's not obvious about why there's a business case for a constitutional solution to reduce the effect of money in politics on our political system and on civic trust and on our future. So I am honored to be with all of you today. I'm going to set this up just a little bit, and then we'll go into conversation. If you would fill out the cards, we'll do our best to weave those in. And if we don't answer them here, we will do so afterwards, and we'll be available in the break at around 3 p.m. today. One of the things about this community and the persistence that's been required for this ambition has been recognizing how serious is the need for change, but also having a firsthand view of the foundational progress. 22 states, 23rd is on its way, right? Maybe 24th. This is phenomenal. And I don't know about you, but that gives me hope and faith. And it's really helpful to come here to check in with that. But I don't know if many of you who are not involved in the business network realize there's been phenomenal progress on the National Business Network and on the business side of this, especially the recognition of the business case. So just a few data points on that, and we will talk to Dave Black about this. You have local chambers of commerce filing resolutions through their government affairs function calling for the amendment. How amazing is that? Right? And it maybe seems kind of makes sense that you would have small and regional, medium-sized businesses calling for this, but we also have increasing recognition by public companies that something needs to change. And this one surprises people, but the idea that if you break it, you own it, the idea that something systemic needs to be addressed if people don't trust our elections or our governing processes. So there was a Harvard Business Review article earlier this year, Political Spending is Bad for Business, by former Chief Justice Leo Strand and Professor Dorothy Lund. And you have more companies having policies that prohibit political spending. I think there are 14 now on the S&P 500 in the US, and we'll hear from Maureen Kline of Pirelli Tire on this. So that's kind of an unexpected twist and a sign of progress. And also we have this corporate political responsibility task force that we've been working on, and Maureen has been part of that. And then you have, yes, but companies need to spend to serve their shareholders, right? And so you would think that shareholders would like the political spending regime, but we're hearing more and more that this is actually bad. When you get to geopolitical instability, or inability to take action on the climate crisis, or fundamental distrust, or companies having to choose which side they're on in order to do business, that we'll hear from Matt Patsky why there's a really clear business case for addressing this problem from the investor perspective. So I hope that will leave you feeling clearer and more empowered as you reach out in your engagements with business coming out of here. One last thing before we dive in, how many of you run or are related to a small business, regional, mid-size business? Okay, great. Oh, some people I hadn't known and some I've seen before. When we end, we'll ask Dave to give 30 seconds of what you can do next. How many of you work for or have family that work for large public companies? Household names? Great. Good, thank you. Or own on the boards of. We'll have things from Maureen, and she'll summarize the task force recommendations for what you can do coming out of here with taking some action. And then how many of you own stock, are investors, have a mutual fund, have a retirement account okay. This is one of the unexpected angles where you can take action. And we'll ask Matt to summarize that at the end. So an ambitious program, we're going to try and keep it brisk, but that's what we're hoping to cover today. Sound good? We'll get started? All right, great. Thank you. Dave, you are from Pennsylvania. Can you see me okay with the light in your eyes there?
Yeah, my apologies for the glare off my head for those of you. Yeah.
So, retired CEO and president of the Harrisburg, Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce for many years, made a huge difference in your state. Now retired, apparently taking it easy?
No. Ask my wife, she'll tell you no.
I heard great things from Shirley last night. You have been working to mobilize chambers of commerce on this. And I know most of us think small business says, why should I get involved in political issues? Well, how does this affect me? So my first question for you is, why do you believe small and mid-sized businesses should be paying attention to the role of money in our political system?
Well, let me start with the chamber end of things. Most small businesses join chambers of commerce to network. That's the number one reason. But once they get involved, sometimes they can find it really interesting and really addictive. And so what chambers try to do is educate small businesses and all businesses about what they can do and what they can impact. And so what we've done with American Promise, using the network that I established in Pennsylvania, is trying to approach chambers, as Elizabeth said, through their government relations functions. Most chambers do have a government relations committee of some sort, and they're not all the same, but it's a good group to get in front of, and generally these committees will run from 10 to, maybe 50, 60 people, and to pique their interest. And I've always started with anybody see those ads recently? In Pennsylvania, we've got a lot of elections going on this year, and we had a big Republican primary for the Senate, U.S. Senate, and so there were just ads upon ads upon ads. And does that bother you? Yes, And so that's how we open the door, and that's how we get them involved. And then as they learn a little bit more, and we've used a lot of the slides that Jeff used this morning, just to talk to them about where the money's coming from. And I think the thing that resonates the most is the foreign money. We heard the general talking about it a little bit earlier today. That is scary to a lot of people, and it tends to get them fired up.
Gotcha. And how does it actually affect small business? I mean, other than the prospect that just seems wrong, how does it actually affect them? We were talking yesterday about the decisions on staying open or having to close during the pandemic, but I know there are others. Can you talk about their actual, the benefit to small business if this were to be reduced?
Well, there's always the perception and the reality, I'll say, of access and money. And through the chamber, we've always had our elected officials in, but sometimes people feel like they don't have a voice, particularly small businesses, that I can't call my congressman and say, what's going on here, and then they read about all this money going on and all the big contributions. Now, I'm not saying that is actually factual, and I've had a former congressman tell me, a good member of Congress is going to listen to a small business because that's how they learn. But there is that perception, and just the fact that all this money is pouring in, and you saw Jeff's slides on the senatorial elections. We're going to go way over $200 million in Pennsylvania this year, and so that goes. Well, how can I talk to my U.S. senator when I didn't give him a dime, him or her?
Yeah, understood. And what you're pointing to in an interesting way, although it's also an asset for small business and medium-sized business, is the appearance of corruption can cause people to disengage, including at a time when small business needs help, needs clear policy, needs a level playing field, right? But the appearance of corruption would make it seem like I just shouldn't bother because I didn't give them any money. The irony is that small business, according to the Gallup polls recently, is the most trusted institution in the country. I mean, elected officials look really good if they can show themselves to be responding. So you'd want them to engage. One last question for you on this one. You're retired. You could be taking it easy. Why are you so concerned about this? You're working really actively architecting our chamber and even some of the Rotary engagement strategy for American Promise. Why are you putting so much of your time and effort into this?
I think, and this is what we try to communicate, particularly to small businesses, that you can make a difference, and the We the People movement, and that we can, working together, move the needle. We can help to enact this constitutional amendment, and it seems like a big order, but if people look back and so much with small business, it's a day-to-day kind of thing, but this is a long-term thing, and everybody wants to be part of some kind of a positive legacy. I preach all the time that we want to leave things better than when we arrived, and that's what we use with small businesses. Yeah, you run your business. Hopefully, you have something good to pass on to who's ever going to be next. But this is something for the broader picture, and you can make an impact. And let's work together to get this. So that's what we use, and it resonates because people, particularly that are involved in chambers and rotaries and things like that, they're involved in those because they care about their communities, and this makes a difference.
And it's ironic because the community is often a place where we do build bridges more effectively because we care about the place, right? And business is uniquely positioned to dispel some of the myths about the money in politics being necessary for business, et cetera, right? So thank you so much for all you're doing, and I hope people will come to this afternoon's breakout to learn more about this process of engaging chambers and rotaries. We'll have some more of that.
Most of what I have to say will be true.
They know you're a business guy. Maureen, thank you so much, and thank you for coming directly here after your flight from Milan. Pirelli USA, based in Georgia. In which district there?
And I'm a little under the weather, so I hope my voice comes through okay. You can let me know.
Great. But you are safe to be in the room with all of us.
Yes, I am COVID negative. I just did a test.
Great.
So we are based in, I personally am based in Northwest Georgia, in Rome, Georgia. Ironically, it's an Italian company. And even though the U.S. company is a separate company, I just want to say right off the bat, thinking about that first panel, I personally would have a hard time making campaign contributions with a foreign parent company. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, let's build on that briefly there. So Pirelli has a complete non-political spending policy. And we're talking about, in the news you often hear about corporate PACs, but the Supreme Court rulings, including Citizens United, enabled corporate treasury money, so from the corporate checkbook, right? And that is where it's unique or rare for companies to have that non-spending policy. Why? And you also have a principled, proactive approach to lobbying, but let's talk about the spending. Why adopt such a policy, and why would it trouble you to?
Yeah, so first of all, many European companies do have a policy like that, and also many companies that are making sustainability a strategic priority and integrating it into their core business also have that kind of thinking, go down that kind of that thinking direction. I would say, so one of the things that makes it possible for me to be up here on this stage is that I have both the public affairs and the sustainability roles, and also because I represent a European company. So I would put this under the G in ESG, governance, ethics, and my company has gone through a process of thinking about when you're a multinational company, you really have to balance so many geopolitical things. You're operating all over the world, and so it was just a very clear choice from the beginning. I don't know that we've ever had a time when we made political contributions. And then as part of our sustainability process, we developed a lot of policies, including this lobbying policy, which is based on the more European idea that essentially, we're here to answer questions, to engage, to partner with local communities when we go to manufacture in a new place. We're not here to manipulate, force things, and to get the upper hand in some way. And I would add, and Matt is the sustainable investing guy, but we have. I lost my train of thought because I'm really tired.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I have an easy one for you.
Okay.
While you wait for that to come back.
Yeah.
For those of us, these are really specific terms, but last time in 2019, someone asked me, what do you mean by sustainability as a business agenda? And can you refresh us on ESG? Because we'll mention that several times, and you may have heard this as investors, but just refresh us on those.
And you helped me remember what I was going to say. So
Great.
So from the corporate side, I think big corporations need to be focused on sustainability and to integrate it into the business. And the way I would define it is being on a path to net positive impacts on the environment and society, right? Somewhere along that path, and trying to move along that path. That needs to happen regardless of what investors are doing, regardless of backlash on what and misconceptions about what ESG even means, and so on. But companies are kind of moving in that direction. Mm-hmm. If you operate in the EU, there are all kinds of disclosure rules, and there is this new concept, which is maybe a technical term, double materiality. But what it means is, and this is where our lobbying policy goes, that what you're doing, your actions as a corporation need to be, if you're doing something that's in the self-interest of the company but damaging to society, that needs to stop. That's unethical. And so we really try to work in that direction and to have all our disclosures and our activities to be, to put us on closer to that net positive impacts.
Very good.
Goal.
Thank you very much. That was so technical.
I don't know if I expressed that very well.
Thank you. And more, we have plenty of time for more questions after. This is a really critical distinction. And just to go to the definitions and acronyms, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance factors. And there is a raging debate with multiple parties having opinions on this, left, right, and center, as to how companies can consider this, how investors consider this, how all of us weigh our portfolios. One of the distinctions is that companies can think about how environmental and social impacts affect our returns, our financial income, and others are about how are we affecting the environment and society, right? And how ethical are we? And the US is a bit of an outlier on this. In Europe and in other places, thinking about that outbound impact is more common. So thank you for that.
Thank you for explaining what I was trying to say.
It's a really, because those are just three words. Right? Yeah. Environmental, social, governance, you'll hear them, ESG. What do they mean? This is a key debate. And I know Matt is chomping at the bit to jump in, but I'm going to follow up with one other question for you, Maureen, if it's not too much at this moment.
I can do it.
Okay, great. So I have had the honor of working with you in this Corporate Political Responsibility Task Force. This is a Chatham House private group of decision makers in government affairs, sustainability, board governance of big companies, mostly big companies. So we can't name the members, but we're working on corporate political responsibility and those outbound impacts. I've had the honor of working with you there, and you have been willing to talk about it. Could you share briefly what you think could come out of such a task force? I think most people would look at it and go, nothing. But what do you envision we can accomplish?
So first of all, thank you for your leadership, because I think in 1 year there's been a wonderful feeling in that group of coming together and that we can do something. So Elizabeth has led this group of corporate people through a process of listing principles that companies can apply, and then thinking about actions to put those principles, to implement those principles. And those principles are divided into 4 areas: legitimacy, responsibility, transparency, and accountability. But then there are lots of, there are lots of principles,
provisions
within those categories. Yeah. And I would say that, for example, legitimacy, to quote one of the task force members, my CEO is not an elected official, so why would we have legitimacy to create policy? And so, where is that boundary? The responsibility comes from how powerful business is, and with power comes responsibility, as Spider-Man said, I believe.
Great source.
And then transparency. We're getting a lot of signals from the investor community to be very transparent about political contributions and lobbying. I mean the corporate sector in general. And then accountability. So accountability for your actions. There's a code of conduct that's already out there that we have decided is one way to implement that and as an action.
Fantastic. Thank you. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about this as a framework is it has companies do a thought process. They can engage multiple champions in the company with different perspectives on how should we and whether we should be influencing the political process, including how we respond to reform efforts, how we respond to the civic renewal. When should we back off? Should we obstruct this and or should we support this? And I think it will guide responses to things like the amendment. It's been a slow process of building up to having a basis for looking at reforms like the amendment. So we're excited about it. It's been a lot of groundwork, and we're just about to go public in a month. So thank you so much for the chance to work together and for telling the story from Pirelli's point of view. I will say there are one other task force member that has described their interest in this is IBM. So it's not just your European subsidiaries of European companies, IBM and several other long-time U.S. companies. So thank
And
you.
IBM has a ban on political campaign contributions since the beginning.
Right, and 14 other companies do now, and it's been increasing. So that's going to be one of the things you can call for. Matt, thank you so much for holding back when I started to talk about ESG. As the CEO of, well, starting with Lehman Brothers and then CEO of Trillium since 2009, think about that, taking over in 2009, and a leader in impact investing, shareholder active ownership, engagement with management. You've talked with CEOs of almost every public company you can think of. Matt has had a conversation with them. And I'd like to talk with you about the investor perspective on companies, say, implementing bans like this and not doing spending. Wouldn't shareholders hate that?
No, it depends on who you're investing in and how you're investing. But if you're investing for the long term, and trying to, if you look at a functioning capital market system, free enterprise should be supported that has better innovative products, innovative services. The incumbency and paying for policy that protects incumbency is a negative for society, for investors. It's a negative for everyone.
And you mean incumbency of the businesses?
Of the businesses. It's also bad for incumbency of politicians, but that's a separate topic. So, it is true that incumbents tend to function in a way in which they spend a lot of money to keep their market share exactly as it is. And when they turn it toward writing policy and paying to get that policy put into law, right, which we've seen particularly prevalent in the U.S., certainly the system we have, I don't want to start off by, the system we have is not perfect, right? And I'm talking about the capital markets. Certainly the political system is also imperfect. But when we start to work toward how do we improve it, the direction it's going is making it worse, right? We had a system where one of the inadequacies, right, that we all are certainly aware of in the capital market system is it steered money to predominantly companies that were founded by and run by white men. We underinvest in women. We underinvest in businesses run by people of color. That is something certainly we've talked about, trying to steer more venture capital, more private equity money to create more enterprises. You want money flowing toward the best ideas. We want money flowing to the best solutions. We are facing such unbelievable problems in terms of society and environmental. We want to make sure that the best ideas are getting funded. And the influence of money in politics affecting policy completely distorts that and is putting us on a path to not only losing our democracy, but losing the capital market system.
As a side effect.
Right, as a side effect.
The phrasing here, it's interesting. So I'm going to protect my market share, but what I'm really doing is killing the opportunity for innovation, right? And solving these major problems that we're addressing in the climate crisis, in AI, jobs, what other industries?
Well, it's across every industry, and certainly a lot of more mainstream industries are practicing that all the time, of looking at how do I defend my market share at any cost. And so pumping money into the political process is not ending up with a good outcome for really anyone,
including those beneficiaries of that retirement account. I want to mention one thing I've learned since we talked last was that the phrase that most government affairs people tell us in confidence is that, we killed that bill.
Right.
Yeah, we killed that bill. It's a bodyguard kind of assassin model. And when you think about the sources of distrust in that collapse of trust that Jeff showed earlier, it was not only polarization and negative politics and ads, it's also that we don't get anything done. Think about those as related, right? And the spirit of compromise, that you wouldn't kill a bill, you would try and make it better. Thank you. I have one last question for you, and then I'm going to turn to the action implications, really rapid fire. You speak to CEOs all the time, individually, more private conversations than most of us have. What kinds of things do you hear from them about their political spending and their philosophy or thinking about it?
And I've shared this at American Promise events before, but it's probably the most just amazing quote that I still will never going to forget was the CEO of Halliburton. I just point out, we don't invest in Halliburton. We've committed to not invest in any political cause, but we're a small firm managing around $6 billion. When we talk to companies, we ask the same of them. We ask that they're committed to getting money out of politics and that they commit not to spend any money on political causes. And the comment that the CEO made of Halliburton was, and this is just after Citizens United, was they just legalized extortion. They just legalized extortion. And then I went on to, we were talking, there was other questions being asked, and one of the questions being asked was, because we were trying to see, well, who's coming? It's like everyone's coming at us. Basically, the line is, your competitors just dropped $250,000 donation to my campaign. I'm expecting you to match that, right? Coming from the left, the right, coming from Democrats, Republicans, it was like, it opened up extortion. And
I got to take us to action now. So clearly, I'm going to propose this is a lose situation, right? So Matt, can you, for the folks in their investor capacity, what's one thing, 30 seconds, one thing they can do on Monday morning to help solve this?
Right, the one thing we all can do is make sure that we either individually, if we own individual stocks, or collectively, if you're in mutual funds, push that whoever is managing your money is acting on your behalf as an owner and is pressing companies to change behavior. So if you're just simply sitting in a passive index product where there's no activity going on to press companies for change, i.e. a Vanguard index fund, move your money. Move it to somewhere where they'll actually take action. Or make sure you're at least putting pressure on Vanguard. Let's see if we can get them to actually change their behavior.
Thank you. Very good, and more on that to come. Maureen, people associated with public companies, an employee of a company, increasing voice, one thing they can do in 30 seconds?
If ESG wasn't so, problematic, I would start with ask your company's 401k program to move in the direction of ESG, although they are passive funds, but that's at least a minimum step. And then as an employee, I think, go to your leadership and just express the desire to get, if there's a PAC, to not have a PAC, or, just express your opinion on this, getting the corporation to go in a different direction. In the public affairs community right now, lobbyists and so on, everyone is really perplexed and confused.
They're going to cut us off in a second. I'm so
sorry.
sorry.
What do you do about issues management? And so that that's something that speaks to the role of business and society, which needs to change. Sorry.
I'm going to ask for grace on 1 minute for Dave to share. Thank you, Maureen. And the employee voice is mattering a lot.
Yes.
Dave, what can people do as relationship with running a small or medium-sized business, including this afternoon's breakout?
Learn. Understand what we're talking about with dark money, understand the difference between dark money and kind of standard political contributions. If I give $100 to a candidate, that's fine. Understand the problem of dark money, understand it's coming from foreign governments, understand what the problem is.
Thank you so much. I have one question here that I will answer, which is where to find out a list of companies that have a no spending policy. Thank you, and we'll answer more this afternoon. Thank you, Jim. If you go to the CPA Zicklin Index, every year, the next one's coming out, you can see the list, and it's been growing. They do a report every year, CPA Zicklin Index. Thank you all. Thank you so much for all that you're doing and for arguing the business case to get out of this lose-lose situation. Thank you all for being with us today.
Thank you.